Hello and welcome to Build-a-kek, the series where we invite players in the community to take on wacky deck building challenges every week. As always, we start with a theme randomly selected from a list of 100. So this week's theme is Topsy Turvy, and this is kind of like a mixture between Exchange of the Spirits with grass, and I guess combined with the Judgment activation cost. So once per turn you can pay half your life points, treat your deck as a face down graveyard, and your graveyard as a face up deck. So you're basically switching your graveyard and your deck in this case. And this is obviously the most accessible way of doing this within the Dueling Book framework that we're working with, so it does lead to some interesting complications. So a couple of things. First of all, you draw from the top of your graveyard, and if cards would be sent to the graveyard, they're sent to the top of the deck instead. Of course, this doesn't really work for extra deck monsters, so they get shuffled into the extra deck, and they don't get treated as if they were sent to the graveyard, so they get treated as if they were being shuffled into the extra deck instead. And obviously, because you the controlling player has a face down graveyard, then they know what cards are in their graveyard, just like with the face down banish zone, whereas their opponent won't know. So we said that in order to allow for the most interesting interactions, basically the player who controls their face down graveyard can interact with it as if all of the cards are named. And they have to reveal cards in order to activate them, obviously, and then do all the usual cost kind of thing. But say you had an Infernoid and Unku in the grave, you'd be able to banish the other Infernoid names in order to summon it, because as far as you're concerned, they're all named. But your opponent can't specifically, say, try and target a particular card within your face-down graveyard using, like, Call by the Grave, unless they know it's a monster. So if they, say your opponent activates a monster effect in the graveyard, they then reveal it in order to activate it, and then you can chain your Call by the Grave in order to deal with that kind of thing. So you can also reverse this kind of effect by paying half of your life points to go back to the original state of the game, with the deck and the graveyard switched around back to normal. And you can do this as many times as you like during the duel, but maybe we won't be seeing that, just given how ridiculous this basically is after turn 1. And we just wanted people to keep it pretty clear. Without further ado, on to the games.
Okay, so for this week we're just going to do a single match, and this is going to be between two of the giants of the series, so Lewis and Duncan. Both playing 60 card variants, obviously, because they want to be able to just switch things immediately and have all the resources available. So Lewis's hand is pretty interesting already. Let's pause this quickly. So he's got a Fabled Sulcius in his hand. If it's in the graveyard, you can send 2 cards except itself from your hand to the grave to special summon it. Might come in interesting. Holding Legs, I believe this, returns will set spells and traps. You can banish it from the graveyard, target set spell or trap your opponent controls, and it can't be activated, so some removal there. He's got a piece of Exodia in his hand. Breakthrough skill can obviously activate from the graveyard, and he's got a hand trap in here from Impermanence. So he's going to do the Topsy Turvy effect immediately, switching his deck for his graveyard, paying 4,000 life points at that point, at which point we're seeing that Duncan is going to chain to that Artifact Lancia, so that no cards can be banished from Lewis's now face-down grave that he's got here, and that's pretty huge actually. I don't think that Lewis knew that at the time. However, he did mention that afterwards he worked out a way in order to play around this. So let's see if he can actually do anything this turn. He's just looking through his grave in order to work out things that he can do. So he starts by activating the Dark Worm. He's then going to go ahead and use Destrudo here, paying another 2,000 life points for that. He's then using a Plague Spreader Zombie in his graveyard, putting the Sulcius back into the deck in order to get the zombie back out. And he's then bringing out the Zephyros by returning that card to the hand for 400, and then he's discarding 2, so they go to the face-down graveyard so he can bring out the Sulcius, which is another Sulcius that he has within the graveyard there. Then he goes for the Synchro Summon of the Omega. He's then going to use the Plague Spreader Zombie again. He's making a Space Insulator there, and then just going for Dweller. I don't think he actually has a way to play through here, potentially. So he might just sit on a Dweller here, but he's actually going to use a Glow Bulb there. and then link those two off for a unicorn. So just climbing up the link ladder, but sitting on a unicorn with a dweller. So nothing huge on that side. Duncan starts off with a set, and then using the effect, there's a dweller there so that you can't activate anything in the graveyard. That's going to be pretty huge. But Duncan does have a tough, but of course impermanence there, stopping that from making a play. So this can just attack straight over the dweller. Keep in mind that Lewis does have one card within his face-up deck, so he is going to be able to draw for turn, but it's just that single card that he's going to be playing off, plus his graveyard. So he draws one, which is the Sulkius, and gets hit by the Reincarnation, and he's not going to be able to draw a card here. So Duncan's not going to be able to play the Reincarnation at this point, as he wouldn't be able to draw anything. So we're seeing, what is it, 7 Banish, so that's probably going to be a Snow there. Yep, Snow comes out. That can deal with the Tough if necessary, I think. I don't know if he's going to go for it. So what is it bringing out the Wind-Up Rat? Maybe it's this one. Yep, so because he gets rid of Desert Appear, he can bring out the Wind-Up Rat, which might be pretty huge. We're seeing Duncan's Snow used in response from his deck. And he's going to get to trigger the, the Spirit Master here. That could be pretty huge. There's a breakthrough skill on the Snow. Oh, and he's not using the Spirit Master effect. Oh, we got rid of the rat, okay. So another dweller here, because obviously every time it goes it gets shuffled back into the deck. But Lewis has nothing to draw at the moment, so he's going to have to put something into his deck somehow. And we're seeing all of the trap summons bringing stuff out from Duncan's face down graveyard at this point, so he's getting all of this massive wall that Lewis might struggle to deal with. But Lewis is going for another Snow here. And he gets a rat from another tape here. Sorts out the flip, and then he can use rat into rat. And then bring out the Chain Dog, which can't be used for a Synchro Summon except for a beast type monster. If it's in the graveyard, you can special summon it, and if you do banish it when it leaves the field, that seems pretty decent. Must control exactly 2 beast monsters to activate it. So he's got the 2 wind-up rats there. So going back into a Space Insulator, because of the fact that these don't go to the face-down graveyard, they get shuffled into the extra deck, that can be pretty huge for looping around with everything. So accessing a Phoenix here, then going back into that Chain Dog. And now he has the Wind-Up Hunter, and this could be pretty huge, because as we used to see in previous formats, if you had access to Wind-Up Hunter, then you could pretty much just remove your opponent's entire hand. So it goes into an Ouroboros here. Obviously you can't actually make it in this zone, so a bit of a mistake here. But it very easily, no, he could just set up a different Link monster there. I don't think there's any huge issue with that. And then could have just summoned the Ouroboros again. We're seeing the Snow come out, and tape it for that rat, making the unicorn, and back those monsters go. Rat brings back out rat, then you can go into a Link 4, and then you can use rat. Oh, is he going to bounce something? No, he's going to put those into graveyard there, face down graveyard. Then you can bring out the Chain Dog for the free special summon for controlling 2 beasts. Those 2 go into Goblin. Just putting the materials into the correct locations. Then going into a Unicorn, using the rat for the Hunter, and now he can finish off the hand loop, getting rid of every card in Duncan's hand at this point. Although obviously it is the graveyard which is the most important resource within this game. But right now he has access to the 3 pieces of Exodia from the Firewall. And keep in mind, the Firewall can't go into the graveyard, so if he gets rid of this, it'll go into the extra deck. So that might be what's happening here. So he goes to the Link 2 for the Space Insulator, brings back out the Plague Spreader, and now he can just loop that Plague Spreader. Mizuki for the Spirit Master, and then he can make Firewall again, which can add 3 more. And that is going to add the final pieces of Exodia, and Lewis is going to take the win from there.
The unstoppable Exodia! Ah, impossible! I've assembled all 5 special cards.
all 5 pieces of Exodia in his hand. That's pretty awesome. Wow, okay. So I knew this was an FTK, I wasn't expecting it to be an Exodia abusing the limitations of Dueling Book on what you can do with your extra deck monsters, because you can't put them into the main deck. I didn't think that would be how this was all going to go down. Okay, so we're seeing another tip here, the Wind-Up Bat for the interesting combos there. Hanawata, we have A and D changer. You can banish it from the graveyard, target a monster on the field, change its battle position. That seems okay. And then the Steam the Cloak. But Duncan's going to get to start, obviously, first of all, using the Topsy Turvy to switch things around, and then he's going to start putting out some zombie monsters. So we have Zombie Master and Shoten Doji. And then gets to return the Mizuki, go through on his glow-up bulb into the Link Reaver here. Which I believe he just put into his deck, so this should probably be in his graveyard. And he's going through with... oh yeah, so using the reincarnation to just sort of... having the fact that you can put both your Trickstar monsters and your reincarnations into the graveyard immediately is pretty huge, as we also saw with the Spiral monsters as well. Just those free summons. So he goes into the Firewall here, has a Mizuki ability to go through stuff. He's just remembering that this is not the graveyard, this is his face-up deck, so he shouldn't actually have anything in there. He gets access to the Master, targeting the Shoten Doji to bring that out. So some free Link materials there. I think he's done the same thing again of putting them into the deck again. But he's going to use the drone to recycle, that's not bad. Gets to look at the deck. And make his Firewall with 3 links. So again, we're seeing Firewall with 3 setup. Oh, and he's got the Cannon Soldier A. So if he has another A and a way to summon it or something, then that is pretty much going to be it. So there's an Underclock there. Brings out the Cannon Soldier. Can use the Cannon Soldier. Oh, but he's hit by a Hanawata here. And then in response, called by the Grave. So he wasn't going to take any damage. But luckily Duncan's drawn one of these 3 of cards to Call by the Graves, which is going to keep him around for a little bit longer. So we can still bring out that A, thanks to the effect of the Firewall. Tribute off one of the... is it Tribute, or is it just Send? Yeah, Tribute one of the monsters pointing to Firewall, in order to get his loop going. So he's just remembering that, yeah, those shouldn't be in the deck, because this is the deck at the moment. They should be in the graveyard. Or for the extra deck monsters, they should go back into the extra deck. So cycling through with these A's now. If he has access to just 2 A's, which I believe he does, then he'll just be able to loop this off infinitely, and that will be infinite damage that he can do to Lewis. And then Lewis is just going to lose out with no life points left over. So this is a fairly typical FTK actually. It's the kind of thing that we've seen pop up in America thanks to Summon Sorceress. I think it's a 2 or 3 card FTK over there. In EU, obviously, it's a lot more difficult to do this kind of thing without Summon Sorc available. But then if you're giving the players the ability to put their entire deck into their graveyard on turn 1, then obviously that's not so much of an issue. So this is just, if anything, this is a great argument for why Grass should stay banned forever, and they should never make anything more overpowered than that. So we're seeing Darkworm come out, and on the opposing side a Chaos Hunter, which again is going to stop all the banishing. I don't know if that's going to be too much of an issue here. So puts back the Sulcius for the zombie, and then uses Bulb to mill it. Summon the Bulb. Those 2 go into the Cerberus, which he can then use to just pop the Chaos, and he's fine then. But he's got a Lance here on Duncan's side, which is much more important. So I'm just wondering if he's changing anything. So Plague, again, going through. Gets out the Unicorn here, and then he can start doing other stuff with the rank 4s, so goes for a Dweller again. That's going to be pretty huge. As we saw in the first game, Dweller shutting off so much stuff. So Duncan's not going to be able to do anything there. And Lewis is going to carry on with his turn, using the Dweller to stop responses from Duncan's side. But he's just going to chain as many traps as possible, it looks like. So you can board wipe and put up a ton of stuff. And then this is a snow coming out as well. I think he's just chaining everything that he has to this one dweller. It's not super conservative. Oh, maybe he's is he saving the... Yeah, he's saving the reload, the Blaze Accelerator. So he's not going to bother board wiping entirely, but just very easily setting up a field with 5 monsters, pretty huge. You can use the holding legs to stop Duncan from using that set card, and then he just has enough pieces that he's going to be able to deal with everything. So that's pretty huge. Obviously Duncan forgot to put Buster in his extra deck, so that's a big deal. Just looking at the chat here, Duncan has a lot of stuff available within Lewis's turn, basically. Killing it just means that killing the Dweller obviously just means that they can reuse it over and over again because of the graveyard being face down. I'm just saying that you obviously have access to so many level 4s, so it's really easy to sort that out, and then set up the hand loop. So let's have a look at the... Okay, so let's take a look at Lewis's deck from the previous game that we just saw, well, the match that we just saw. So we start off with triple AD Changer, so this is obviously the one that changes the battle positions of monsters. Steam the Cloak everyone knows, as with Zephyros, and the Cannon Soldier enables all of the damage-based FTKs. Then there's Chain Dog in here. We saw that coming out with the Wind-Up Rat combo, so that's pretty cool. Then there's Cyber Dragon Dry in here. I don't think this does an enormous amount. If it's banished, you can target Cyber Dragon you control, stop it from being destroyed by battle or card effects for that turn, which is kind of interesting, but not a huge deal. You can also make it level 5, but it does limit what you can summon. Then there's triple Desert Taper. Again, we saw this comboing off with the Snow, and allowing you to summon out your Wind-Up Rats without... basically, you don't need any setup for this format because you just immediately have all of your resources available. So Destrudo, an easy summon. Dot Scraper, also an easy summon. Best to keep in mind that within this format, when you use the Topsy Turvy effect, it doesn't actually send stuff from either location, it just changes the definition of graveyard and deck. So it won't trigger effects like Dot Scraper when you use that. But you can banish this to summon it, and then once it goes to the grave for your link material or whatever, then you can just summon it again. You also have the Exodia head for the FTK that we saw with the Exodia. Sulcius, again, we saw this come out, it's basically free within this format, as is Snow, because you have so much material that you can just very, very easily bring this out, enable some disruption, or just assemble some really strong plays. Triple Cherries in here. It looks like he was going for a bunch of hand traps that were aimed to deal with anything that could be a huge problem. So one of those is Dweller. You just need to be able to remove that from the game in order to keep playing. Another would be something like Firewall, which does enable a lot of FTKs. Then there's the Giant Rex to combo with the Snow, Glow Bulb because it's a free summon, and then triple Hanawata, so that you can deal with all of the FTKs within the format, because this is definitely a format where you expect your opponent to be assembling FTKs, but one of those that can't really be dealt with is the Exodia one. So then he's also got triple holding legs in order to stop back row, basically there, Mizuki to enable the zombie engine, which again, because you instantly set this up to be live, it's very, very quickly capable of doing something. That's one of the interesting things of Sulcius, is that if you drew the cards that you need to be in the grave, you could just instantly put them into the grave, because you're bound to have one of these in the grave if you didn't already, and bound to have one of these in the grave if you didn't have the things in your hand in the grave. So then there's a Necroface here, Plague Spreader Zombie we saw come out a whole bunch with that, and then we have the Solitaire and the Spirit Master just to combo off together. Spore is pretty cool as well. Darkworm is a free summon too. There's Vendread Core in here, so if it's in the graveyard you can banish another zombie from your graveyard to special summon it, which is pretty nice actually. You could just banish one of the less useful zombies, or you can banish the Spirit Master in order to trigger it, which is quite nice. I don't think the rest of the effect really gets used. You can't target it, I guess that's the thing. Then there's double wind-up bat to enable the FTK with that card. The wind-up hunter, which we saw obviously hand-looping the opponents, is a massive ton of events for this kind of format where you just take away all of the resources. If it's at all relevant, because maybe if you hand-loop them, then they've still got all of their graveyard available and it won't make much difference to them. Then we have triple wind-up rat because you can bring up it with the taper. The remaining pieces of Exodia for the Exodia FTK there, double breakthrough skill, and triple impermanence as the remaining hand trap that obviously can't be hit by Call by the Grave, which is pretty nice. For the extra deck, we have the Mega Fleet Dragon, so I guess this is what you use with the dry. So basically just you want to be able to use it as a way to out extra link boards there. Then double Omega, one Dweller, because it's obviously very important for this format to shut off your opponent's graveyard. Amaterasu is pretty interesting because you have Snow, so you can essentially search any hand trap with this immediately. Ouroboros to help out with hand looping is cool. Levia, again, you can abuse the banish effects, and if you need to mill, you have Minerva. I don't know if it would ever become super relevant. Then the Link monsters, which are all obviously very important for this format, so Firewall, the key nightmare names of Cerberus, Goblin, and Phoenix, and then Unicorn for dealing with particular problems, Link Dreamer as an easy summon, like a very easy summon with the number level 1 so you can just bring out immediately, and Space Insulated too. And because all of these go back into the extra deck, when they would be sent to the grave under the Topsy Turvy situation, it means that obviously you can just abuse Firewall an infinite amount, and you can keep reusing all of your rank 4s as well, which is just a substantial ability that you have there. Then in the side is basically a lot of hand traps and some chalices, so DD Crows and Ghost Bells being probably the go-tos for this format, stopping that graveyard interaction. Triple Ghost Ogre and Skullmeisters as well, this is another sort of graveyard interaction here too. And then you have Chalices, which alongside Impermanences allow you to deal with on-board problems, so things like the Dweller there as well. So that's it for Lewis's list. One more thing for this list, actually, Lewis did mention that it can play through any hand trap in the game that he's aware of. He did encounter that obviously it couldn't deal with Lancia. I think that's the only hand trap he hadn't thought of, which affects us in a particularly large way. And he was considering citing that for the future, or potentially maining it even. And he's tweaked it a little bit. He says that if you use, I think it's Quillbot Hedgehog, then you're actually able to FTK through any hand trap within the game, which is really, really cool. So next we'll take a look at Duncan's list that we just saw in the match. So this again is a 60 card list, but it is running some spells in here and a ton of traps actually in order to assemble the big level 4 boards that we saw coming out. There's a whole bunch of interactions that you can get through the quick effects enabled by having these traps in the graveyard. So let's run through the list. So triple Mizuki here, then the one Zombie Master for the combos to go with the Shootin' Doji 2, the Spirit Master, Unizombie, and Plague Spreader. You only really need the one-ofs for all of these because you instantly get the setup from the Topsy Turvy effect. And then only double Candina, one Licorice, and one Lilybell. I think that just sort of enables you enough plays through there. You're not going to be normal summoning the Candina much anyway. 2A, 1B, and 1C. You need the 2A for the Firewall FTK, but otherwise it's just the pieces. He did, of course, forget to put in the Buster in this deck, but otherwise that would have been really crucial for establishing stronger boards with better disrupts and floating access too. Plus, when you would tribute the Buster's cost, it would go back to the extra deck if you were in Topsy Turvy mode, which is pretty interesting as well. So double Tough and the Super Agent here, this enables him to deal with a lot of back row, or a lot of problems, in that instantly these are all available in the graveyard with rescues, so you can just summon them out straight away and then instantly pop anything on the field that's getting to be too much of a problem, especially because you know what's in the deck if your opponent has engaged the Topsy Turvy system, where their deck is suddenly face up and their graveyard is face down, so you will know what is on top of their deck. Then the one drone's there for the stacking, the one cannon soldier for the ABC FTK there, then Dark Worm for the free summon, same with Glow Up Bulb and Spore as we saw before. He's only running one snow with this. I guess you don't really need it hugely because you're just going to have so much material anyway, so you're just going to be summoning at once, and then you have many other ways to summon out your level 4s that only have to banish like 1 or 2 cards maybe. The Destrudo again. Interestingly, he's got these Cerberus here, so if you take damage by battle or by an opponent's card effect while it's in the graveyard, you banish this card from the graveyard, target one card on the field, and destroy it. So if your opponent hasn't Dwelled or like Lanciered you, then you can just bring this out and deal with most of the FTK problems, which is pretty interesting, but obviously you won't have that set up immediately, so you will have had to have played at least one turn in order to deal with that stuff. Then he's got the one Jet Synchron here for the free access there, the one Sulcius as opposed to the 3 that we saw from Lewis, one Zephyros 2, Ibly for any Nightmare combos, and a Gameciel, pretty interesting here because he's playing through with an Interrupted Kaiju Slumber as well. So triple Ghost Ogre, triple Chaos Hunter, and a triple Lancia. So these are essentially the hand traps which should be able to stop your opponents. I think, I'm not sure how good Ghost Ogre would have been within the format. I don't think we saw it come up. And we did see that Chaos Hunter can be outed fairly easily. There are just too many ways to deal with this, I think. But the Lancia is certainly putting in a lot of work when it did come up in that match. Then we have the Gammas and the Driver. Not too much of an issue. If they're in the graveyard, you can just banish them for your snow or something, and if they're in the hand, then they're obviously very useful against opposing cards. Triple Called, this is great because instantly, if something activates in the graveyard, it has to be revealed, so you can just get rid of it, and if there's a hand trap activate, you can deal with that too. Then we have the Slumber for blowing up boards, sorry, not for blowing up boards because he doesn't have the 2 Kaiju, just for searching the Gameciel as an option there. Then one Cyclone. I'm not sure why he's gone for the 1 here. I guess perhaps it's recyclable through some of the combos that are available to this deck. Triple Impermanence, triple Rescue, and triple Reincarnation with the 1 Breakthrough skill, because once you put that in the grave, it's set up for you. For the extra deck, we start off with Linkuriboh and Mermaid, then the usual Nightmares of Goblin, Phoenix, and Cerberus. Underclock to enable some funky combos where you can just sort of recycle this, and then Unicorn 2. Then we have a Decode Talker and Firewall, which you can sort of loop through, which is quite nice. 1 Borreload and Boral Sword for quicker OTKs. Same with Chambara, you just want to establish that OTK. Black Rose is very accessible for this format, so it's very easy to set up your Black Rose board wipe and then carry on just popping your opponent's field. It takes so little in terms of resources to bring out this card, so definitely worth running too. And then the 1 Dweller, because you only need 1, it's just going to recycle itself every time, so that's not too much of an issue. I guess you could probably say the same thing for the Black Rose as well, actually, that it would just recycle itself, so you don't have to worry too much about running multiples of that. Within the side, he's got the triple Cherries. I guess he didn't really know what would be coming up from the opponent, so it's always good to have it as a side option. Triple DD Crow again, we see this in both of the decks because graveyards, you need to be able to manipulate them a little bit more. Then he's sided in this interesting engine with Blaze Accelerator, Reload, and the triple Scatter Shot, because if you can delay your opponent enough that you actually have a turn and use the Topsy Turvy, you instantly have board wipe ability. You just have to put these in a specific location and then you're all good to go. The third Candina is pretty interesting because he's got the Light Stage engine for dealing with back row, I guess. Then a Bone Crusher here, what does that do? When this is special summon from your graveyard by the effect of a zombie type monster, so Mizuki, that kind of thing. You target a spell trap your opponent controls and destroy that. During the end phase of the turn, this is special summon destroy. That's not too much of an issue because you'll just link it off or something anyway. But the fact that you can summon this out and just deal with back row, I guess, is kind of the big deal that he's going for here. And the same thing with Holding Legs as we saw in the previous list. You can just banish this from the graveyard and deal with a problem there. So this is sort of a side deck with a few options for dealing with back row. There's some board wipes and some graveyard manipulation as well. So another very interesting list here from Duncan.
Thank you all for watching this series and helping the community to grow. We've got some amazing themes coming up in the next few episodes, so be sure to hang around, subscribe to the channel, and keep following along with Build-a-Kek.